A look now at COVID-19 cases in the state. The state reporting more than 1,800 new cases yesterday with 25 additional deaths. Both numbers are dropping, but we also typically see a dip in these figures over the weekend. Now, data is also showing a drop in our weekly average positivity rate. That number compares the number of tests to the number of new cases. We are currently at 7.5, inching closer to the goal of less than 5%. But in order for this to be considered a significant drop, we need to see these numbers consistently fall. Less than half of Americans say they will get a coronavirus vaccine if one is approved by the government. That is according to an NBC News poll. Out of 34,000 adults who took the online survey, 44% said they would get the vaccine, 22% said they would not. Nearly a third said they weren't sure. Senior citizens, those with college educations, those who make $100,000 a year or more, and Democrats were more likely to say they will get the vaccine. An increasing number of children have become infected with COVID-19. The CDC says that as of August 3rd, a little over 7% of all reported cases were among children. However, children make up about 22% of the population. The CDC also says infections have been steadily increasing from March to July. According to the agency, the true infection rate in kids is unknown, partly due to a lack of widespread testing. The University of Georgia ramping up COVID-19 testing. UGA looking to test around 300 people per day with a goal of 24,000 campus tests by the time the fall semester ends at Thanksgiving. The free testing is being offered to anyone at UGA who is asymptomatic. Testing is also offered to students with symptoms at the University Health Center. UGA's fall semester begins on Thursday.